Attention Scaling Up Nation. You need a partner you can trust when it comes to the products you put in your customers' systems. Look no further than Scranton Associates for your custom blending needs. As a 100% private label toll blender, they combine your formulations with their expertise to deliver high-quality water treatment products made to your exact specifications. Scranton Associates has been helping the water treatment industry for over 100 years. With quick turnaround times and guaranteed accuracy, Scranton Associates is the partner you need to scale up your water treatment business. Visit scalinguph2o.com/Scranton. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/Scranton. Scranton Associates. We don't just blend, we create solutions. Life and business can feel chaotic when you're trying to do it all. That's where Andy Melton Coaching comes in. For nearly 2 decades, Dr. Andy Melton has helped high-achieving leaders find freedom in their time, relationships, finances, and purpose. His 90-minute strategic rhythm reset is more than a coaching session. It's a chance to redesign your week so you can get more done without burning out. You'll create a personalized rhythm blueprint that aligns your goals and priorities and walk away with a clear plan to focus your energy. Trade chaos for clarity and bring your dreams to life. To learn more and book your session, visit scalinguph2o.com/Andy Melton. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/ANDYMELTON. Don't wait. Schedule a strategic rhythm reset with Dr. Andy Melton today. Welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast, the podcast where we scale up on knowledge so we don't scale up our systems. I'm Trace Blackmore, the host of the Scaling Up H2O podcast. And nation, happy 4th of July. Tomorrow, if you're listening to this episode, tomorrow is the 4th of July, one, I think, of our country's favorite holidays. That is Independence Day. And last year, I did something very different for the 4th of July. Well, one, we celebrated entrepreneurship, and I don't think we would have most of the water treatment companies that we do if it were not for entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship is one of my favorite things to study and to learn about and to take part in. So I wanted to celebrate that. We did that last year. And then you might also remember I read Patrick Henry's speech, "Give me liberty or give me death." And that was difficult. There are a lot of words we do not use in our regular speaking in 2026. Last year was 2025, of course. And there were a lot of words that I had to make sure that I pronounced correctly. And I had to make sure that I got the spirit of the speech. I don't know how well I did, but I did hear from a lot of you that that was the first time that you had ever heard that speech in its entirety. So I thought that was pretty cool that I was the one that brought that to you for the first time. That is one of my favorite speeches ever. Several of my friends are attorneys. They say they study that in law school, being one of the best, well put together speeches ever. And then how to make an argument in front of a jury, they study that. Now, if you're wondering what we're talking about and you haven't listened to episode 427, that's the episode that we are talking about. And we're talking about it because tomorrow is the 4th of July. Now, normally here in the United States, we celebrate the 4th of July because we declared our independence from England. And we celebrate that with fireworks and hot dogs and hamburgers and getting together with each other. So I hope you have some fun plans for tomorrow. Of course, it falls on a Saturday. It's always great when it falls on a Saturday because you get to go to these great fireworks festivals. So I hope you have something planned for fun to do tomorrow and celebrate the independence of our great nation. Nation, some other venues, some events that you might want to take part in is the 2026 ASHI Annual Conference. And ASHI is the American Society for Healthcare Engineers. They're having their event August 2nd through 5th in Minneapolis. And of course, if you work with hospitals, this might be a good event for you to attend. We're going to have all that information for you to find out more about that conference and many more by going to scalinguph2o.com and going over to our events page. While you're there, also look for the 4th Annual Water Efficiency and Conservation Symposium. That is taking place August 4th through 6th, and that will be in Chicago, Illinois. Of course, that information will also be on our show notes page. And last but not least, something that I am super excited about is the Hang taking place July 9th. And it's a little bit different this year. Next week is going to be our next installment of the Hang, and it is taking place during the work day. Now, something we started doing a couple hangs back was putting out some surveys, and the survey said if we were to have the Hang during the business day, a lot more people would be able to attend. So I'm hoping that is you, and I'm hoping you have your calendars marked for next week, July 9th, at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be exactly 1 hour. We're going to start exactly at 1 p.m. Eastern. We're going to end exactly at 2 p.m. Eastern, and we're going to have a lot of fun in the process. Now, this is all about networking. This is all about learning about some current events that are going on and figuring out, are there people in the room that can help you solve issues that you are experiencing? Or maybe you can help them solve some issues that they are experiencing. We're going to have a lot of fun, and we're doing this in conjunction with the AWT and specifically their Young Professionals Committee. So if you're on that committee, go ahead and use the Hang as a time to meet your fellow committee members and just learn more about the Association of Water Technologies, learn more about young professionals, but really get to know some more people that are in our industry so everybody can build their network. Now, if you go to scalinguph2o.com/hang, you can register, and I can't wait to see you next week because I, of course, will be hosting the Hang, and we will get to see each other next week. Nation, if I did not mention an event that you were hoping that I mentioned, it doesn't mean we don't know about it. It could, but most likely we just didn't have time to talk about it on today's show. So go to scalinguph2o.com, go over to our events section, and try to find the event that you are looking for, or look through all of them to see which event you're going to go to this year. And if you don't see something on there you think we should know about, go ahead and go over to our show ideas page. Let us know about that event, and we will update that so we can continue to keep that calendar current. Well, Nation, one of my things I love to do is to bring people that I meet in my life to you, the Scaling Up Nation, so they can share items that I know will help you with your day-to-day. Here is our next interview. My lab partner today is returning guest Alicia Butler Pierre, CEO of Equilibria. Alicia, great to see you again.
Good to see you too, Trace. It's been a couple of years.
It's been far too long. I think the last time we saw each other in person was when we were both speaking at Tim Fulton's TED Talk event.
Yes.
And we were both very nervous. I'm sure we don't remember those conversations we were saying to each other, but we got through it and we were both awesome when we did it.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. He needs to do another one of those.
I know.
Tim, if you're listening, you got to do another one.
Yes, please, Tim.
And that's how we met our mutual friend, Tim Fulton. And I looked back, and can you believe the last time you were on this podcast was in March of 2020? We were going through COVID during that time.
Wow. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So much has happened.
Ever since COVID, I've lost sense of time.
I know. I think everybody has had this time delusion thing since COVID. I think the best we can do
Yes,
now is pre-COVID or post-COVID.
exactly. That's exactly right. Because if you ask me anything between the year 2020, 2022, it's like it's all just one long
It is.
year. And my ability to pinpoint exactly when something happened is very difficult for me.
Well, since it's been a while since you've been on the show, and thank you so much for coming back, would you mind reintroducing yourself to the Scaling Up Nation?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am, as Trace said, Alicia Butler Pierre. I have a company, Equilibria. We will celebrate 21 years of
Wow.
business this year. That means I'm either crazy, have a glutton for punishment, or I just can't give it up, Trace. I just can't give it up.
It's because you love it.
I love it. I do. I do. What we do, we traditionally we have been an operations management consulting firm. So what that means is we go into different organizations and we literally help them figure out how they can operate more efficiently. So we do a lot in the lanes of Lean Six Sigma and business infrastructure. And most recently, we have pivoted into the training space. And I think that's what you're going to be asking me more about today, Trace. And so, yes, in a nutshell, that's me. That's what I do.
Listening to when you started, that got me thinking back to the first time we met. I was in Tim Fulton's Grow Smart class,
Oh,
and
yes.
you came in and you spoke with us. That had to be right around the time that you started, wasn't it?
It was after I started. I started in 2005. So when you and I met through Tim's course, that may have been, gosh, was it around 2008, 2009?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yes. So I had a couple of years in by that point.
Wow, time flies.
It does.
Now, you started out as a chemical engineer. How'd you go from that to what you're doing now?
So, Trace, most chemical engineers, people may not realize this, but we tend to work as one of two types of engineers when we first get out of college. One type is as a process engineer, a true process engineer, because I hear so many people use that term now and they don't have that chemical engineering background, but that's another story for another day. And then secondly, as design engineers. So I was on the process engineering side of things. I was working at a very large organization when I graduated from college. And it didn't take me long to realize that I did not see myself being in a chemical plant, let alone an oil refinery for the rest of my career. And through a series of different types of interactions, namely with accountants, because as a process engineer, my job was to literally monitor the process. So I'm very familiar with wastewater and boilers and condensers and heat exchangers. I've designed these things. So what I found fascinating though, Trace, is when there were accountants that were assigned to different parts of the plant where I was working. Those accountants would come once a month. And do you remember the old printer paper that had the perforated sides
Oh,
on it and with the
yeah, yeah.
green and white stripes going across? And they were about that wide, like 11 by 17 inches. And she would bring that thick stack of papers with her. And it was like she was talking another language, like she was speaking another language, talking about assets and liabilities and supply and demand. And I couldn't make heads or tails of it. I was an engineer, not an accountant. But I knew that those numbers impacted our daily production schedules. But I still didn't quite make the connection. And that's when I decided to go back to business school. So I was working full time during the day, going to school at night. And I have to tell you, that was the missing link, that MBA education, because it opened my eyes to the world of commerce and I wanted in. I was a sponge. I just absorbed all of it, accounting and marketing and operations management, all of these things that I didn't learn in my studies as a chemical engineering student. 9/11 happened, Trace, and honestly, that ended up being a catalyst for me going back to school. And once I graduated, I just went all in, man. I acted on this intuitive hunch that I had that I needed to get out of New Orleans. I was living in New Orleans, Louisiana at the time. Needed to get out quick, fast, and in a hurry. I quit my job abruptly in September 2004, graduated that December with my MBA, sold my home January 2005. And in February 2005, I moved east to Atlanta, where I knew one person at the time. No job lined up, no prospects even lined up.
Wow.
Just acting. I thought you knew that story.
I know, I didn't hear this
Oh, okay. I
before.
thought you knew that story. So yes, that is how I landed in Atlanta, Georgia. And it didn't take long. It took about 60 days for me to realize, oh my gosh, I'm applying for all of these jobs. I'm not hearing anything back. It was just soul crushing. And I started reading these different books, magazine articles, and I started noticing a recurring theme that we're all blessed with these natural skills, talents, and abilities, but through our quote unquote education, we're literally being trained to become employees and not entrepreneurs, where we can capitalize on our natural skills, talents, and abilities. So I started through some introspection, thinking about, well, what is it that I'm naturally very good at? I was good at organizing. So believe it or not, Trace, you probably don't know this part of the story either. My company, Equilibria, started in 2005 as a professional organizing company. And what I found was two main things. The first is most of my clients were entrepreneurs operating home-based businesses. So they weren't inherently or chronically disorganized people. They certainly were not hoarders. What they needed, and this is the second revelation I had, they needed processes and systems. And so that's how I started tapping into my background as a chemical engineer. So I was able to combine this natural skill and talent of being able to organize things combined with my ability to really understand processes, how things flow, whether we're talking about liquids, water through a pipeline, or if we're talking about information and work flowing through a particular organization. To me, it's all about flow. It's all about process. And how can we make that process flow as seamlessly as possible? So that's how that transition happened. And it's been a wild, crazy, wacky roller coaster of a time ever since then. But as you said at the beginning of our recording, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Now, I think we said it was 2008 when we originally met.
Probably so, about 2008, 2009.
All right. Do you remember the first process you taught me?
It was probably an accounting process. Was it an accounting
It
process?
was note cards, and you were talking
Oh,
about to even start a
oh
process. So
yes.
you like gave me a process to do a process, and I had no idea about processes at the time. I kind of did, but I didn't know how to make them my own. And you taught me to put the big steps on note cards
Yes.
and then just put all the note cards out on a conference table or something, and you can reorganize. You could see what the bottlenecks were, what the issues were. I still use that today, even with all the technology.
And I tell people that all the time. It's analog. There is still much value. Don't get me wrong. The advancements that have been made from a digital technology standpoint are incredible. But there are still these innate things within us as humans, because we're talking more and more these days about AI agents. And the lines are becoming more and more blurred between what humans can do versus what these AI bots can do. But yes, there is still absolutely value in those low risk, low cost analog tools that can still give us valuable insights into the way we work on a day to day basis.
Now, you have an interesting perspective that you can translate from chemistry to engineering to accounting. And a lot of times, people that listen to this podcast, including myself, we have difficulty doing that. So let's say we've got to do something And we know we have to do it. We know there's an ROI for it. We know maybe they're going from 70% efficiency up to 99% efficiency if we were to do these things. But now accounting just sees this capital expense.
Ah,
And we can talk about all the great things they're going to get and chemically why it's better, mechanically why it's better, but all they see is we're paying out this money. How do we have a better conversation around that?
so showing the linkage, a big part of it for us, because as I listen to what you just described, to me, I would describe that as the operations of the business. And you're right, there are miscommunications all the time. And in each group, we all think that our group is the reason the company or the organization is in business to begin with. But it takes all groups. Visibility is a huge part of this. I always recommend dashboards. Do you all use dashboards?
Absolutely.
Okay. Does everyone have access to those dashboards, including folks from accounting?
Well, we have dashboards we use internally for our company, but I don't know how good of a job we do with our customers with that.
Okay. Because being able to show cause and effect is powerful. Oftentimes, you're right, they see the work that we do, what we consider to be improvements, they see it as just an expense. But we have to be able to show that by us making this one-time investment in X, over time, you're going to be able to see the correlation with a boost in revenue, profitability, those kinds of things. So being able to have all of those things onto one dashboard, if you could roll up some of those KPIs into even larger KPIs, have the different functional groups within the organization all represented on that dashboard, then you can start to see, okay, when we made this investment in January 2026, yes, there was an increase in expenses, but by the end of this summer, by the end of, let's say, the second quarter of 2026, you might see a significant spike in revenue as well as profitability. Well, why is that, Trace? Oh my goodness, we aren't doing anything different, but we did do something different. We made this investment. And because this investment is allowing us to operate more efficiently, it means we can do more in less time or more in the same amount of time. It enables us to be able to meet our customers' demand. I have this conversation often with my students. I also teach Lean Six Sigma. And so we have this conversation all the time, Trace, about, oh my goodness, how do I get justification for my process improvement initiative? Because my boss and their bosses all think this is just an expense. How do I justify this? And so if we can show the direct correlation between that investment in the efficiency project, process improvement project, show how that translates to the dollar. You have to relate everything to dollars, either dollars saved, dollars made. Hopefully it's a combination of both. But unless you show that cause and effect, the direct impact, that direct correlation, you're right. They're not going to get it. And they certainly won't have buy-in also.
That's great advice. I think whenever we can reduce everything down to dollars, now that's a language that everybody can understand and we can look at.
And I have one more tip for you. There is a Lean Six Sigma tool that we use called the cost of poor quality. And I'll be happy to share a link to an article that I wrote a couple of years ago about it, but also a template that your listeners can download. It's literally explaining in dollars again, this is the cost to us if we don't act on this particular investment, that, and you have to frame it as an investment. You always have to frame it as an investment. If we don't do this, this is what can happen in dollars and cents. And again, because so going back to that MBA education I was telling you about, Trace, one of the first things I remember my first accounting professor telling me is that accounting is the language of business. So we, those of us who are you and I, as well as your listeners, your Scale Up H2O podcast community, we have to understand that we have to communicate in that language when we're talking to folks across the aisle in accounting. Otherwise, they're just not going to get it.
Hold on to your test kits, folks. We're going to take a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors. Your system deserves the best, and so do you. Thermal Fluid Technologies brings you Protocol heat transfer fluids. Formulated with their innovative no-pit inhibitors designed to keep your systems efficient and corrosion-free. Whether it's HVAC, food processing, or beverage applications, their glycol-based solutions deliver reliability where it matters most. Plus, with their comprehensive coolant testing program, you can rest assured knowing your system is always operating at its best. Discover the difference by going to scalinguph2o.com/TFT. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/TFT. Thermal Fluid Technologies, where performance meets peace of mind. And now, back to our interview. Now, you've mentioned lean several times. We've done several shows on lean. Do you mind speaking into that a little bit? If somebody's just tuning in today and they've never heard about that, or maybe they don't know how that plays in business.
Sure. There's lean and then there's Six Sigma, and they've been combined. You can still find programs where it's strictly lean based or strictly Six Sigma based, but typically you will see the two frameworks combined, and they're just that. Lean Six Sigma is a framework that combines what were traditionally two different frameworks. They're all quality frameworks. And what that means is these are methodologies. It's a set of methodologies, principles, as well as tools to teach you how to analyze the way you work, your processes, the way you work, the way you do things, and figure out how can we improve the quality of the way that we work? And how does that translate into our end product or our end service? Many organizations, Trace, think that it's a manufacturing framework. And that is how it started. Its roots are in manufacturing. So lean is all about the reduction of waste. Let's look at the way that you all are operating. And I'm going to analyze that with such a fine-tooth comb using data. And I'm going to strip as much waste from your process as possible, making sure that we're doing everything from a customer-centric perspective. Lean comes out of Toyota. Six Sigma is statistical. That in and of itself is a statistical term. Six Sigma, Trace, is saying, I want to have my processes so buttoned up that the likelihood of there being an error or a defect in my end product or service is almost zero. So that means every time we deliver something to our customer, it will be free of defects, free of error every single time. That's what Six Sigma is about. Most organizations outside of manufacturing, honestly, don't have the stomach for the Six Sigma part of it because is heavily driven by statistics and data analysis, and it takes a lot longer. It's a long game with Six Sigma, whereas lean, you can kind of have some quicker wins and gains on the lean side of things, but combined, that's what the framework is all about.
What a great explanation putting those two together. I've always heard them together, but you did a great job of explaining how they come together and how they're different. Thank you for that.
Thank you. And Six Sigma comes from Motorola, by the way. Just
okay.
Little fun fact.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, Toyota 5S. I know a lot of people listening are doing that, especially if they have warehouses and things like that. But then it gets a little blurry with how to use Six Sigma.
Yeah, that could be an episode in and of itself, Trace.
I think we're going to have you back for that. Well, we were going to talk about podcasts, and you have a podcast, I have a podcast, and we both consume a lot of podcast content. And a lot of that is probably in that educational space. And I'm sure, like me, you've listened to a podcast and it said it was educational. And after it was done, you were like, was this a commercial? Did I get anything out of this? You do a fantastic job with making sure your listeners come away knowing more than when they started. And then you've come up with something on how you're actually giving them credit for what they're learning. Do you mind telling us about that?
Oh, sure. This has been our latest labor of love, and it's something I'm so excited about. We have a new podcast training portal, which we call Potty Train with two D's.
That's clever.
But the way it works, Trace, is we take our podcast episodes. We have a partnership with the Project Management Institute. And literally every single time we produce a podcast episode now, once that episode goes live, we then send that information over to PMI. They listen and they come back and tell us, yes, you can offer this particular episode and award what they refer to as PDUs, which stands for Professional Development Units. You can offer PDUs if people listen to this episode, and this is how many PDUs it's worth. And this is where it falls in our talent triangle. So for those of your listeners that might be project management professionals, PMPs, they would know what that talent triangle is. So PMI is essentially giving us the approval and the permission to officially put ourselves out there as being able to offer those professional development units. And so, yes, the podcast, you can always listen to that for free because we believe very, very firmly in everybody being able to have access to the information, that you shouldn't have to pay for that. However, we do have bonus material. And so if you want to listen to kind of the backstage conversation with a particular guest, that requires membership into the portal. And obviously, if you want us to submit your PDUs or earn your PDUs and we submit them on someone's behalf to PMI, that's the part that requires membership. And it's only $9.99 a month for unlimited listens. Kind of think of it kind of like a Netflix, but for podcasts. So you can listen to as many as you'd like, and you take a short quiz. This is where the education part comes in as well. The quiz is really short, usually 3 questions, and it's based on information that comes out of that particular episode to reinforce what was learned. And then we submit that information over to PMI on that person's behalf. It's interesting because building the portal itself took about 7 weeks. So that was the easy part. And I'm sure you know this too. And for anyone, just be comforted in knowing that to actually build something oftentimes, that ends up being the easiest part of the process. It's the marketing of it. That's where the rubber meets the road, truly. That in and of itself is also a long game, but we are so excited about it. And there's a very interesting backstory into how that came into being. But yes, that is our latest endeavor. And it's a great foray into our training transition.
We're going to talk about that training transition. Before we do, maybe we can do a little on air coaching. So, I'm very involved with the Association of Water Technologies, and they actually announced that we're the official podcast of them at last year's convention. So, that was fantastic. And I get listeners all the time that have their certified water technologist designation, and they ask me, is there any way that I can get credit for all the things that I learned on this podcast as continuing education units towards the CWT? Any advice you can give me on some things maybe I can tell the members to tell the people at the Association of Water Technologies, or maybe how I can propose to them why we should be doing this?
So one of the things that you can do, and I don't know if that governing organization do they award, for example, if you were to produce a conference and people attended that conference, does that governing organization actually give event planners? I'm just going to use them as a starting point. do they give event planners that opportunity to offer continuous education credits?
Yes, there are several ways that people can get those education credits. One is by hosting a seminar like that, attending a seminar like that. There are articles that people can read and then take quizzes on that to prove that they read the article. So I think what we're talking about already exists in that world.
Okay, so then do they require some type of partnership?
I'll have to figure that out with them. I'm not sure, but we do have a partnership already.
Okay, so with PMI, it's called an authorized training partner, but this is with that organization in particular. It's a vetting process, and it's a very expensive
I
process. But
see. I
again,
see.
I don't know how it is with with the governing agency that you're speaking of. The reason we went after PMI first, in case people are wondering, well, I thought you do Lean Six Sigma. Well, yes. Unfortunately, with Lean Six Sigma, there is not a governing body for Lean Six Sigma, but there is for project management, and project management and Lean Six Sigma do actually go very much hand in hand. So we went after PMI first, very big fish to catch, but we did. Again, there is a vetting process. So there's an application that we had to fill out. There were all kinds of other forms. We had to submit financial statements for the last 2 years of the business. We had to be able to prove that we had a training background. So I was able to leverage my work with Purdue University. That's where I teach my Lean Six Sigma course. I was able to leverage that as part of my training background. And one of my team members, he is the PMP because I'm not a project management professional. I'm not certified in that, but he is. And so we joined forces, and that's because someone has to be a certified project management professional also. That's part of the vetting process. And so once we submitted all of our paperwork, it moved really fast, to be honest with you. It took about a week. I remember receiving a phone call and they asked very specific questions. Again, this was to vet us and make sure that we were who we said we were. They check things. They look at your social media presence. They look at your financial statements again. They also look at your company's website. They want to make sure that if they give you access to their information and access to their portal, as well as being able to use their logo, their image, and their likeness as part of your marketing strategy, they want to make sure that they are hitching their wagon to someone who's legitimate. So I know that's not a problem at all for you, but they definitely have little mechanisms in there to weed out the bad actors is kind of the point that I'm making. And then once that vetting process was over, it took a total of about 2 weeks. And then they said, okay, here's your invoice.
There it is.
And that's the final filtering mechanism is, whew, when you get that invoice, it's something else, let me tell you. So yes, we did that. And then we started to build the portal because what we didn't want to do, Trace, was build this. It's an LMS that we've built, a learning management system. And that took again, about 7 weeks, but then the testing of it. I mean, we're still making improvement because now you're starting to kind of get into the software game as well. But we wanted to make sure that we had something where people could log in, they could pay, they could earn their credits. It is impossible for someone to go directly to PMI and self-report using our podcast. So they might be able to self-report if they've read a particular book or if they attended a particular conference. They cannot do that with our podcast. And I want to mention this because it's a huge, talking about investments again, it is a huge investment for you to join forces with these governing agencies. And you just want to make sure that if you've invested all of that money, that people can't just say, oh, yes, I listened to that episode with Trace and Alicia. And yes, I'm going to go directly to that website and report my CEUs. You know, that's unfair to you and your team because you've worked so hard to build all of this and put all of this content together. And for someone to just take that and be able to self-report, it isn't fair. So that's why we have those kinds of mechanisms in place to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Well, I appreciate all the background. I get listeners all the time ask, is there any way I can get credit for this? And maybe there is a way. Maybe we'll talk a little bit later. You can guide me more through the process.
Yeah, you should definitely approach that agency and tell them what you are thinking of doing. And I don't know if it's a different type of partnership or whatever it is that you can do to receive authorization to offer continuous education credits.
Well, again, thank you for all the advice there.
You're welcome.
Well, I want to talk about the training that you're doing because it is
Okay.
fantastic. Can we start talking about that?
Sure. So honestly, I've always heard people say this about teaching, that teaching is, unfortunately one of those careers that's grossly underpaid, but so incredibly gratifying. And I feel the same way. By me teaching, I've taught several hundreds of people now at this point over the past 5 years at Purdue. And I realize also at this point, not only in my career, but just personally as well, Trace, I'm at a point now where I'm at a point and at an age where it's really more so about giving back, capitalizing and leveraging all of the years of experience and working on so many different projects in so many different industries with so many different people, taking all of those experiences and sharing that with others, bringing others up behind me, basically, is what I'm getting at. And that's what teaching and training give you the freedom, the flexibility, and the latitude to do. So these podcast episodes as training materials, that's one piece of it. But we also provide Lean Six Sigma training for those who actually want to learn how to become Lean Six Sigma certified, or if you're just curious and you want to know more about, like you asked me, what exactly is it? What is Lean and what is Six Sigma and why have they been combined and why were they ever separate? But we also have the project management training as well. So we are authorized to help people train to sit for that PMP exam if you want to become a certified project management professional. But we also have the certification to be able to teach project management skills and training and tools to people who are interested in just learning about the fundamentals of project management as well. So we have that traditional classroom learning, we have our online courses, and then we have our micro courses, which are our podcast episodes. So those podcast episodes are really designed as reinforcement or that continuous education piece to complement the traditional classroom and online training that we do.
Your story is you found that there was a disconnection in how people were communicating. You said, I want to be the solve to that. And now you've created all of these tools around solving that issue. I'm sure we have some listeners today that are thinking, I can pinpoint the problem. What should they do about it? How can they follow in your footsteps?
AI.
Put it in ChatGPT.
Put it in ChatGPT. Because I'm often asked, because we've recently expanded into another country as well, and so people ask me, "How did you do that?" But it started with my own podcasting journey. I started pre-COVID in 2018, so I was talking to so many companies about how to scale their operations, but I wasn't scaling my own company. The very first thing that I did was I wrote a book. That was my way, Trace, of getting information out of my head into a book that could be distributed to the masses. That makes the information that much more accessible. As I was writing the book, I was working with a digital marketing consultant at the time, and he's the person who suggested I do a podcast. I'm like, a podcast? I can't do a podcast. He said, yes, you are going to do a podcast. You can and you will. And that was 2018. And I've been going ever since. The first show we sunset, that was the one that you were on. It was the Business Infrastructure Curing Back Office Blues podcast. We stopped that one at 300 episodes. We started a new show, which is called Scale Tales. And that capitalizes on all of the things that I learned in podcasting doing the first show. So the art of storytelling, the importance of having sound design, shorter episodes. Let's have a very heavy educational component to this. That's what Scale Tales is. It is the amalgamation, if you will, of all of the things that we learned in 6 years of podcasting up to that point. To get back to your original question, so podcasting opened a door that I didn't even realize was closed. So very similar to how the MBA opened my eyes to the world of commerce, podcasting gave me access to the world, literally. So during COVID, I'm making a concerted effort to reach out to people in other countries. I'm curious because I have this, again, this intuitive hunch that Lean Six Sigma and some of the other work that we're doing, there's a greater appreciation for it outside of the US. So as I started interviewing people in these other countries, they're like, oh my goodness, yes, yes, please tell us more. Tell us more about what you're doing. But it was still COVID and I was still stuck here in the US. I couldn't get out. So the minute it was quote unquote safe to get out into the world again, I started flying the friendly skies, Trace. I think I was attempting to count this the other day, but I think in 2.5 years, I went to 13 or 14 countries with the sole intent to see it for myself. And oh, did I see it. I was like, oh my gosh, yes. Okay. How do we make this happen? So the need is so, so, so great. There are so many things that we take here for granted in the US in terms of education, especially in terms of professional education. And so again, that podcast training portal is a bridge that is starting to close that gap that I've seen, not just heard, but have literally seen with my own two eyes globally.
Alicia, I did the math. It's been 6 years, almost 6 years since you've been on the show. We cannot have another 6 years go by before you come back. So we need to schedule another interview. I'd love to come on your show, so maybe we can talk about
Yes,
that.
please. Yes, absolutely.
Well, I know we've got so much to talk about. We'll just have to save that for another show. Let's go ahead and do the lightning round if you're buckled up and ready for that.
I think so. Let's go.
All right, now these are round two questions because you've already answered round one. You did very well in round one, if I recall. All
Thank
right,
you.
so now you can take all of those points you earned and bet them on round two. So very, very high stakes here, Alicia. Very high
Okay. All
stakes.
right. Okay. No pressure.
All right, question number one. What would you say is your superpower?
Being a social chameleon, I can talk to anyone. I can talk to anyone, anywhere. And I have. Oh, the people that I've met and the conversations that I've had. Seriously.
Have you done the temperament survey that I
No, I've
talked
never
about with
heard of
Tim?
that.
Okay, we'll talk about that after the show and I'll send you the
Okay.
information so you can do that. I'd be curious if you're a green temperament, but we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
All right. Question number two. What would you say your biggest accomplishment has been?
Since we first did this round one, my biggest accomplishment has been setting up my business in another country, literally halfway around the world, and becoming a resident there as well. So I am now a resident of Qatar. My business is also set up in Qatar.
Okay, we're going to have to talk about that when you come back. That's just amazing. All right, last question. Actually, we got one more question after that. If you had a magic wand and could change anything going on in the world, what would you change?
Poverty. Yes, we think we've seen poverty here in the US. Oh, Trace, I've seen things, you know how they say you can't unsee certain things? Yes, you cannot unsee certain things. Yes.
Yeah, I was in Roatan. I've got some images in my head of exactly what you're saying. And I think if more people had that imagery, we'd probably do more about it.
Yes, we would absolutely do more and do better.
Final question. What are some of the books you think everybody listening needs to have read at one point in their life?
I have to say one book. Okay. I'm going to say, from a business perspective, How to Win Friends and Influence People. How
Great
to
one.
Influence People, or maybe I had that backwards, by Dale Carnegie, but you know the book I'm talking about. Because at the end of the day, we can talk about processes and technologies and AI and systems and all this stuff. But if you don't know how to deal with people, it's all you're dead in the water. Seriously, you have to have people around you, work with them to get things done. That is an incredible book that every professional needs to read. Whether you own a business or not, you need to read that book.
That's a great recommendation. How about one more?
Oh, well, it's this book here. It's called It's Not You by Dr. Ramani.
I got broken up that way before. It's not you, Trace, it's me, but we're not going out anymore.
This is a book about identifying and healing from narcissistic people. It's a book to educate you about narcissistic personality disorder because it has been eye-opening for me. And I think the more we can educate ourselves about mental illness, because again, we're working with so many different people, so many different personalities. People come from different backgrounds. They have different experiences. And we need to be able to understand that so that we can meet people where they are and act accordingly. And so that's been a tremendous asset for me because as more and more people start to become more and more selfish, it's helping me to understand what's driving the behavior. So it's not about labeling people, it's about understanding the factors that lead to that behavior.
Alicia, if people want to find out more about the work that you're doing, what should they do?
Definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm very easy to find, Alicia Butler Pierre. And you can also go to our training portal, which is pdu.eqbsystems.com.
Alicia, once again, thank you for coming on the Scaling Up H2O podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Scaling Up Nation, as you heard in the interview, Alicia and I share a mentor, Tim Fulton. That's how we met, through Tim. Tim, of course, has been on this podcast several times. Alicia has been on this podcast before, but she is just incredible when it comes to business processes. And one of my favorite things are to create processes around what allows us to do the things that we need to do in order to keep our identity as a company or a podcast or whatever it is that we do. What is the way that we do it? And then how do we make sure that we continue to do that consistently? Now, Nation, you might remember last year, episode 408, I did a pinks and blues. Somebody asked me about how I document a procedure, and that episode was called The Power of Processes. So if you want to know how I document procedures, go ahead and re-listen or listen if you haven't heard it before, episode 408, and maybe that'll help you get started. One of my favorite things that we talked about with Alicia today was the note card. And that was how I met Alicia. And she taught me in Tim's class how to take complicated items and put them down on note cards. And then you can rearrange them and you start to see how they all fit together. And then you can take that and you can start building your processes. Now, I'm going to share with you when I was president of the Association of Water Technologies, the year before I was president-elect, and I got to plan the Reno Convention. And at that time, as president-elect, my job was to plan the convention, but also review all of the papers that came through. And we had a ton of papers, and it was the first year ever we did 3 tracks at one time because we had so many great papers. And I had no idea how to put all those papers together, how to align them in a track. And at the time, I didn't know we were going to do 3 tracks. So what I did, I wrote all of the papers out and their titles on note cards. And then I put all the note cards on my conference table. And I looked to see if there was a pattern to any of them, or if one maybe created a foundation for a next one. And after a little bit of work and a lot of moving of note cards, I then found that they really did fit into 3 tracks. And it was through that note cards that we got the convention calendar for all of the papers that year because Alicia taught me that tool. Now, had she not taught me that, I don't know how I would have come to that conclusion, but she did, and I did, and I think that's a tool that you can use if you haven't used that before. Now, a modern way you might want to use that is maybe using Planner and using some of the cards there as your note cards, and you can digitally move those around if you are in the Microsoft network. And there are all sorts of different programs that use that card-like function. Now, I utilize this quite a bit when I'm writing something and I'm looking at my table of contents and I'm creating an outline. And I want to know how I'm going to get from A to B to C to D, but I don't necessarily know what A, B, C, and D are yet because I don't know how they fit together. So I write down my big points on note cards and I kind of frame them up to see if I talk about this first, does it help me explain this next? And I know that's an oversimplistic way to use note cards, but nation, it works. And if it works for me, I'm sure it will work for you. And you can use this for all sorts of things. Maybe you're designing a scoreboard for your company and you're trying to figure out what the different KPIs are. Well, you can write down a bunch of different things and you'll start noticing that a lot of those metrics will flow up into maybe 1 or 2 KPIs. And that will allow you to, one, know what you need to track in order to get those KPIs, how to organize those onto a dashboard so people know what they're looking at. And then also, if a KPI is off, where can you now go down into to fix that? You can use note cards for all of that. Of course, we talked about so much more than just note cards today with Alicia, but I have to tell you, that is one of my favorite tools. I'm now using more electronic versions, but I'm still using that base premise, and it is something that I think you will enjoy doing if you've never done it before. Well, something I know you enjoy because you tell me you enjoy it is all the segments that James McDonald helps us out each and every week with. Here is a brand new Words of Water.
Hello and welcome to Words of Water with James, the industrial water game show where I give you the definition and you get to guess the word or phrase being defined. Will you rise to the top or get blown down to try your luck another day? There's only one way to find out on Words of Water with James. Today's definition is the pressure of a system measured relative to the surrounding atmospheric pressure. In other words, it's the pressure of a system above atmospheric pressure. The answer is gauge pressure. Okay, for those who got it correct, step to the right. For those who got it wrong, please step to the left. Ha 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 ha! Gauging your reaction, the pressure's off now. I'm James McDonald, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Words of Water with James.
Thank you, James. And Nation, if you need to catch up on any podcast episodes, on any Words of Water, on anything that we put out into the Scaling Up Nation, we make that super easy. Just go to scalinguph2o.com, and everything that we have had in the past is archived there, so you can continue to utilize all of that content to make the water treatment industry better. Now, something a lot of people are doing is they are having discussions within their teams about things that they're learning on this podcast. And we've been doing this for a couple of years now, but still a lot of people don't know about it, is we offer discussion guides. And the discussion guides are 100% free. They contain questions that you can ask your team to try to learn more and deeper about the topics that we're talking about on the podcast, so your team can get better at any of the items that we're talking about on the podcast. And all you have to do to get one of those discussion guides is go to scalinguph2o.com, go over to the episode that you want, and go ahead and click on that discussion guide, and we will get that to you. So many companies are utilizing that and having great discussions. It's my hope that maybe you utilize that during your next team meeting. Well, Nation, we're going to have a brand new episode for you next Friday. Until then, I hope you try something new, and maybe that contains a note card. Have a great week, folks. Join the Rising Tide Mastermind. Discover a community where passionate professionals come together to support each other's growth. Be part of a tribe that celebrates your wins and helps you overcome challenges. Don't navigate your journey alone. Find your community with us, the Rising Tide Mastermind. To find out more about the Rising Tide Mastermind, go to scalinguph2o.com/mastermind. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/mastermind. Find out if the Rising Tide Mastermind is right for you.